card base.
My card base.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. And you are joining a card club in progress. And tonight we're going to be working on what I called a mystery card. It's not the traditional mystery stamping that a lot of you do, but we're going to give it a shot in a little bit of a different way. When I sent out an email to the people who were making this, I sent a picture of these 4 pieces of paper. And I gave dimensions for them. And we're going to turn this into a card. I am tempted to show you the example, but I'm holding off on that. We're going to see how long I can hold off on it. But let's kind of jump in and use any color combination. I will tell you that beside the card base, you may want to focus on your designer series paper piece, and I'll give you the dimensions in a minute, but pick that first. And then the colors of the cardstock that you're going to use may follow. Maybe, maybe not. So, card base is traditional, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 on the 8.5 inch side. I am using a new in color that will be available in the new annual catalog. It's called Darling Duckling. To me, honestly, it looks like Dijon mustard. It's got that sort of green, gray-ish tone. It's beautiful, and it goes along with a lot of different colors. So whatever color you would like for your card base, again, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. But now we're going to get into the details. Designer series paper. This measures 3.5 by 3.5, and you're going to see a pattern in a minute. The remaining pieces are all square. The reason is I am going to be in a blog hop this coming Sunday, and the theme of that blog hop is it's hip to be square. So I thought I would be lazy, I'm confessing to you, and do the project that I'm going to share on the blog hop with everybody tonight. And that way I can also post this video in connection with my blog hop post and sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can call me lazy. I will not be insulted. So again, this piece is 3.5 by 3.5. That piece is going to be bordered by a piece of cardstock. I do recommend that you make this a color. And I am using we're going to call it a new in color, but it's really a returning color. And it's strawberry slush. And there is some strawberry slush in this designer series paper. That designer series paper is new. It will be available in the annual catalog. It's called Florals in Bloom. And if you think you have enough paper with flowers on it, maybe you do. And maybe when you see this, you will think that you don't. This piece measures 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. And again, I would just pick a piece that has some color in the designer series paper that you choose. And then there's going to be 1 more square. And I chose black cardstock. I just wanted it to be the actual frame around the real focal point for the card. And it is a square. This measures 4 inches by 4 inches. Okay, so the 3 pieces that are the squares that we're going to be working with, I'm going to go right to left. Designer series paper is 3.5 by 3.5. 1 layer of color cardstock is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. And the basic black here is 4 by 4. I am going to start, I'm going to put these 2 pieces to the side just for a minute. I'm going to bring back my card base. And the first thing I'm going to do, and this is where you can decide, I will give you a couple of options, but the first thing I'm going to do is adhere the black, in my case, the black square to the front of the card base. So if I put my piece here, I'm kind of committing to a portrait card. And down here, I'm going to have an area where I can stamp my greeting. If you wanted to, you could move your card into a landscape view. You could put your whatever color you're using, in this case, the black, in the middle. Maybe not put a sentiment on the outside. You'll see where we're going in a little bit. And then you could always stamp on the inside of the card. On the portrait, you could also center it. It's going to be up to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my piece toward the top of the front of my card, and I'm going to leave room at the bottom for a sentiment. And I truly am simply going to adhere that piece straight down and try to make about the same width border top and sides, because the bottom is going to have a little bit more of an area for me to do what I would like. So remember, I'm working on a theme that is all about squares. And everything that I'm going to do for the focal point of this design is going to be about squares. So I'm just popping that piece on, trying to get it kind of centered, looking left and right, making sure they're about the same border. It almost looks like a Polaroid picture at this point. Okay. All right. Now we're going to work a little bit on the focal point. And again, remember that we're dealing with squares. I'm just going to pop this over to the side for a minute. So when I bring out these two pieces, this designer series paper, we're going to do something with it in a minute, but it will be bordered by the, in this case, the strawberry slush piece. I'm going to, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this into 4 squares. And I want to be able to place those 4 squares where they need to go so that they will align on this piece. And I'm going to do it in a way that is going to give us kind of a cheat, a visual cheat. So I'm bringing out my scoring board. This piece, as you will remember, is 3 3/4 inches square. And what I want to do is I'm going to score in the middle vertically, then I'm going to turn it and score it again. So it will look like a window pane. It will have an X right in the middle. What that means is I need to score at the halfway point, and that is 1 7/8. So right before the 2-inch mark, between 1 3/4 and 2 inches, you're going to go in at 1 7/8 and just give that a nice score. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to again score at 1 7/8 on the other side. So again, I'm trying to get a bunch of squares into this pattern. And now I have 4 squares visually from that 1 square of cardstock. You'll see in a minute, you have an option. You can turn it so that the embossing is facing toward you. You can turn it so the embossing is going away from you. That's a choice. So keep that in mind for what we're going to do in a next step. I'm going to go ahead and put my scoring board to the side. And I'm going to grab that piece of designer series paper. And remember that this measured 3.5 by 3.5. I want to create 4 squares from this 1 square, which means I'm going to cut vertically, turn it, and cut vertically again. So if it's 3.5, half of 3.5 is 1 3/4. So if I bring out my trimmer, I'm going to put this at 1 3/4. And cut that. We'll take one piece to the side, take one of the piece that was in there, turn that on its side, bring that to 1 3/4. And I'm just going to put this over here because I want to make sure I know how the pattern is going. It was going to end up looking kind of like a puzzle. And then I have my other piece, and I'm going to cut that at 1 3/4. And I'll bring that over here as well. So now I've taken one piece of designer series paper that initially measured 3.5 by 3.5, and I've cut it into 4 squares. Each of those squares is 1 3/4 inches square. In a minute, I'm going to show you my example because I want you to think about how you want to do your card. So I'm just pulling these over. Now, there are so many options at this point. One is that you could take the piece of cardstock that you have put your score lines on, and you could attach that directly to, in my case, the black square that I have on the front of the card. I could also, before I put that down, maybe I want to wrap some ribbon around the middle. I could do that, some twine. And I'm going to leave this one pretty clean. I'm not going to commit just yet. I could also flip this piece over so the embossing is facing toward me. So the bump is actually coming out on the top rather than the embossing going toward the back. So you may want to kind of play around before you really commit to what you're going to do. But what this simply is going to be is taking these pieces that you have cut, and you're going to adhere them in each of those 4 panels, and you have a nice visual of where you should adhere them so that they will line up because you've done those score lines. So super simple. So I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to push this off to the side. I'm going to show you an example that I did using this technique. And if I move the camera in the right way, you can see that the score lines on this one are going in. And I simply adhered the strawberry slush down to the black cardstock. And then I put each of the squares in the center. And it's really an easy thing to do because you can make the frames around each of those quarters to be the exact center. So you know exactly where to put your pieces. And then I used a sentiment from a very fun stamp set. This is a new one in the new catalog, and there's some really cool dies that go with it. But I like this just a note, and I stamped that in the bottom right. I love that script. It's very forgiving. You don't have to get it exactly straight. I don't think there is necessarily a straight. And then I used some of the new gems. These are the new in colors. And I just popped a big one in the middle, medium right here, and the little one right over on the right. So this is one option. And before I finish the card that I started, I want to show you another way to do this kind of card, but in a different fashion. Last week, we had our demonstrator team get together on a Saturday. And we all did a really cool project. You may have done this before, where you start with a piece of, let's see if I can get this together the right way. Here we go. You start with a piece of paper that initially is 8.5 by 11. You stamp down the middle vertically, you stamp down the middle horizontally, and then you cut the piece into quarters. And you can use each of those pieces for another card.
That turned out really pretty.
Thank you. that kind of spawned me into an idea for this card. And it was an idea before I did this version. So this was my second pass. The first pass that I did, and it's the exact same ending result, is I put this card together.
Cute.
And the way that that one is made is you start with exactly the same pieces, meaning if I look back at the pieces that I used to create the card that we're creating now, we've got designer series paper, 3.5 by 3.5. We've got a piece of cardstock that is 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. We've got a frame that's 4 by 4. And then we've got a card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. So they're all the same thing. The only difference is rather than using designer series paper that is already done, you create your own designer series paper. And in this case, I used a piece of designer series paper that has a really cool burlap on the back. This is the woven textures. And I stamped using many of the new ink colors and some of the ink colors that are still in colors, but they will be retiring next year. And I created a really pretty pattern on this designer series paper. And then I cut it in quarters and ended up with the exact same kind of design as this. You know, I made my own little designer series paper and then cut it in pieces and put it on. The difference here in finishing it is I scored some lines on my scoring board, and then I took a black watercolor pencil and just traced in, I left the card in my scoring board, and I just traced over the score lines to get that. And I used the thanks stamp. And I thought that was really nice. That came from the Impressions of Bloom, which is a new stamp set. So you definitely have a lot of options. And you could also, as I mentioned, I could even take this, even though I've put my black cardstock down, I could move this into a horizontal card and use a vertical stamp and maybe say happy birthday on the side. I think that would be really, really pretty. So I love cards like this that give you a very easy design. This is so simple, and it's not one that any level of stamper could do this. But then you have the freedom to create what you want to and use it for any occasion. So I hope you give this technique a try and take really 4 pieces of paper, do some magic, cut it in the way that you would like to, and make a card for any occasion. And I would love to see what you make.